All right. I think we're going to get right into things. So my name is Robert Starmer with Cumulus Technologies, and we're going to work with Istio. We did a session previously that was looking at just some of the basics of Istio. We're using the lab that we've built up, using much of the community development around Istio. So we're using the book info environment and just detailing some of the resources. One of the things that we did yesterday was we actually set up the Istio environment, or previously we set up the Istio environment and got that all running. I've recreated those steps. Basically, it comes down to, in this particular case, launching Minikube. So that's basically here. Um, I'm going to do it here. Minikube start, and then installing Istio. So we've downloaded Istio into the Istio 051 directory here on my laptop, and gone ahead and launched the Istio service, simple Istio service. And you see that by doing that through Kubernetes in this particular case, a number of resources get created, including all of the key Istio services, the pilot, ingress controller, and a mixer, and the certificate authority service. Once all that's up and running, here we're just looking to make sure that our pods, the actual pods running those Istio resources, were up and running. We also went and grabbed the actual book info app. We loaded that service into the environment. We can see that those resources all got created. And then just to make sure we got it, we're grabbing the gateway URL. We had a resource search for that to look for the IP address of, in this case, our Minikube Kubernetes environment. So this is a single virtual machine-based Kubernetes environment. And we're looking for the ingress service node port. So this is the port that the ingress service is expecting us to talk on. Then I jumped over and just to make sure things were working right, we went and looked at the ingress service page. There is already a web route, an HTTP route embedded in the system as a part of setting up the bookstore application, and that's routing to our product page. Now, as a part of this application, it's a multi-component application. Actually, let me just jump back a page. Let's see, I want to go to lecture 18. So this is the application that we have. This is what we're using. It's the book info app. This is an application that the Istio community has put together just to showcase the technology. And again, Istio is a service mesh system. Here we have our Python front end. This is the product page, Python web applet, and that's what's actually running here. That's what we're looking at. In addition to that, there are a bunch of back-end services, and so this is where the microservices concept comes from. We have 3 different versions of our reviews application, and those are either no stars, so basically the stars weren't being created. There was nothing driving ratings for the reviews. Then there were stars that were black, and then somebody decided that it would be better if they were red, and so then we have a 3rd version that has red stars. The black and red star services also talk to another resource, which is the Node.js based pod running the ratings service and a little embedded database there. And then we also have one more, which is a details pod. So that's a different application component providing details on a book-by-book basis. Now, one of the interesting things about Istio is that by default, if we don't do anything specific, our routing rules will take anything with a specific label and use that as the service target. So since we have 3 services, version 1, version 2, and version 3 of our ratings application, if I reload this page, what I should get is effectively a round robin. So it's going to go to each of the services in order every time I reload the page. And so we see here red stars. The next one we should get is hopefully no stars. So there's basically no review data being presented here, and then we refresh again, and we should get black stars again. So we just sort of go cycle through this over and over and over again, and we'll get those different stars. Now, That's interesting. That's sort of a core component of this. Um, so we've got this up and running. We've proven that. That's sort of where we got in this particular class so far. And then we're going to just now start looking at how we can use Istio to manipulate those routing rules. Now, this is useful for a number of different things, for bug fixes, for blue-green deployments. Blue-green deployments are where I have one cluster of systems and I want to just migrate all of my users over to another cluster of systems without breaking things. So I basically want to let one environment drain and another environment start coming online. So basically, I don't want to break connections that are already there, but I want to create new connections anytime a new resource comes online. I can do canary deployments, which is actually defining a percentage of traffic shaping within the Istio control plane. These are all important technologies, and the routing control lets us do that. So we're going to start using the Istio control command. And actually, I have to add Istio control to my path. So let me just dig back in real quick and find, just back up a couple lectures. So once we actually grabbed Istio, we set the path, which is in here. All right, so hopefully our Istio service is in the bin directory. So this is a Unix-based path. If you're on a Windows system, the path is going to be a little bit different. And again, we'll just jump back to the lecture 20 here. Let's go ahead and set the path. So we should have Istio control now. Okay, great. So we have our Istio control app. And one of the first things that we can do is just get a look at what's going on with the routing rules as they stand. So what is the data that the Istio control plane has? Let me go ahead and grab this. Oh, we don't have any route rules. So right now, the system is just doing default routing in that the resources themselves are looking things up based on service names. And if we do a kube control get svc, we'll see that we do have a ratings service and reviews service, right? So these are the service addresses that are being used by the application. And the reality here is, I believe, service ratings. So there is a selector here. That's what I was looking for. This selector, oops, yeah, so this selector is what's actually defining the round robin resource. If we actually look at our pods, we'll see that we have 3 reviews apps. I'm looking at the wrong one. I want to look at the reviews, not ratings. Ratings is just the Ruby app. But same thing, we're going to have a selector here for reviews, right? And we were seeing the round robin operation. This is what Kubernetes is doing on its own. So Istio isn't really doing much for us here beyond just acting in the exact same fashion that Kubernetes does. If I look at, oops, hello, come on. That's an interesting one. Let's see, we want to get pod. Let's go ahead and look at one of our reviews pods. If we look at the data here, we're also going to find that within, not the state, but within the specification. So I don't care about the status, that's just data about what the pod is currently looking at. We want to look at the actual configuration. And of course here we see all the information about the Istio environment, but we're looking for, okay. So here we have a label app is of type reviews. And so in the metadata, because I've labeled this app as reviews, this label is what maps to the spec within the service, right? So in the service here, should be right before us, we have a selector looking for a label of app reviews. Here's our label app reviews. And this is, again, in the V1 pod. If we go look at at all the pods here. We can look for get pod. So this is the v2 pod. Again, we'll look at the YAML output, and I'm just going to grep for app because I'm looking for the app label. And here again we see reviews. So right now it's just this review selector that's being used to round robin select the resources, and Istio is just following that rule because there aren't any overriding rules. One of the things that we can do though is we can start saying, well, no, I want to direct traffic to a specific version. So here is this is a manifest for route rules for Istio to say I want to only look for things with label of version v1. So again, if we go back and look at our v1 pod, let's see, that's way back here in the metadata section. Hello. Here we go. So we have another label, in this case version v1. So while the service is saying, hey, I'm just going to round robin on anything that has a label of application is for reviews, we're now going to tell Istio, I don't care what the service thinks it's doing. I only want you to route traffic to things that have a label of version v1. So this is a pretty powerful and simple way of actually defining this. And here we'll go ahead and we'll create a route rule. We'll say yes. Now let's do this. So this is again coming out of the samples of our Istio directory, and again we're in the Istio directory here within our control. So we go create our v1 route rule, and we can see that now that that's been created. Just so that we get a chance, we can actually look at this file. We can say that there's a little bit more going on, but really we're just saying we want these actually. Yeah, so we're going to make sure that anything that we're talking to is of version 1. And we actually have reviews and ratings and details. All these pages all have a route rule now. So every resource has a route rule. And if we go and ask Istio again, Istio control get routes. Oops. There we go. So now we have rules for each of the 4 different resources, and we should be able to now verify this because we should no longer get any stars if I refresh this page. All right, so it's refreshing. You can see the little icons coming back, and all I ever get is the same non-star reviews. Now, one thing we can do, and this is not in the class, but what we can do is we can say, well, let's Istio control edit. See if this works. Reviews. Oh, well, we can do this a different way. Let's go ahead and look at our route rules again for these. We can find our reviews, and we can say, okay, this is the rule for reviews. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to say create a file, and we're going to just change this to 2. And what we should be able to do then is Istio control apply reviews v2. I keep forgetting Istio control is not kube control, so let's try Istio control create. Okay, how about we try replace? All right, so now if this worked, what we should do is we should only get black stars. So now we're actually doing what is effectively blue-green deployment in one way of thinking about this, in that I have taken all the traffic that was being directed to the V1 service. Now the rest of the service is still the same, right? We haven't changed the route rule for talking to the product page. We haven't talked the route rule for talking to the details or the back-end service even. All we've done is said, hey, I want to use the version 2 output here for these particular resources. But we can actually get even fancier. So this is just using the Kubernetes labels within an application, and that may be appropriate if I'm in an all Kubernetes environment. But one of the things that we I think briefly touched on in the previous session was that Istio can actually work across any set of resources. I can actually put an Istio service proxy in front of a virtual machine, for example. Actually, I would actually probably embed it in the virtual machine and redirect traffic internally in the virtual machine space back into the application. But the point is that I can actually implement that, and the control plane still can talk to those resources, etc. But it's no longer appropriate for me to talk about labels in terms of those routing rules because I haven't labeled those resources. I don't have those Kubernetes labels to key on. But I can actually key on other resources. So, for example, we can do dynamic routing based on layer 7, so based on information within the HTTP header itself. And so here in this little rule, we're actually going to look at a cookie that's set by the application. So, first off, it's already sort of saying we're going to use the V2 rules. So we'll actually go ahead and look at this. We'll go ahead and create it, and then we can look at it. All right, so now I've created some new rules. Let's go ahead and look at these rules and see what we're actually doing here. And you can see that I'm creating a reviews. I've changed the precedence, but specifically I want to look at reviews being mapped to version 2. So I'm actually going to change my other route because otherwise it's always going to give me black stars. But basically I'm looking for something within the headers, right? I'm looking for a cookie that is setting the user as JSON. Well, by default we're not logged in. We can actually see that here in the book app where we haven't signed in as anybody yet. We'll do that in just a second here. First I want to go and change my label from version 2 to version 1 as the default route. Right, so we're going to go back. We're just going to edit our V2 rule here. And we're going to say, hey, for V2, let's make that V3. So this is, again, a little different than what the lab actually directs, but I think it's interesting. And we can now do our replace again. So even though the file name here is V2, we changed the actual content of the file to say, let's point to the version 3 environment. And again, if we refresh this, we should now get red stars. And sure enough, there we go, red stars. Beautiful. We're routing to red stars. But if I sign in as user JSON, I don't need a password. There are no passwords for this. And now I look, I'm signed in, and what do I get? Black stars. So this really is the simplicity, in a sense, of this. I'm using the Istio and the complex work that's gone in behind that to actually implement these resources. As you can see here, we've then actually gone ahead and now modified how the application works internally, and have started looking at that. And that's really what I wanted to talk about today. So in the previous session, we went over just the basic setup. We actually went over some Kubernetes setup as well because we wanted to use Minikube, which most of you have access to, a system that's good enough to deploy a Minikube-based Kubernetes environment. And that's just a single node, super simplistic system. But it does get the basic pieces running. And then on top of that, we layered Istio, which is very simple because Istio can be launched as a manifest in the Kubernetes environment and get that service up and running. And then today, what we really did was we just took that engine that was running and this nice example, which has multiple resources available to it, and started manipulating how Istio is directing that traffic. So that's really one of the first microservices benefits to this tool, is just this ability to move and manipulate these environments around in a very efficient fashion. So there's a lot that you can do with request routing. We've actually just done two things. One, just forced traffic by default to specific resources. And then secondly, we've actually jumped into looking at the actual forwarding data based on context within the session request itself. And in this case, we logged in as a specific user and used that to actually redirect our routing. And again, if we sign out, we'll notice that we'll go back to our red stars, which is actually our version 3 of the ratings application and the data that gets pulled in for the ratings application. Again, a very powerful tool, in a sense fairly simple to work with. You can see that there are some inconsistencies between what the Kube control CLI tool uses and what Istio control uses, but these are just things that we learned fairly quickly. And I hope that you guys find that this is a useful tool for you as you look at building applications. We'll plan on doing some future sessions. Would love feedback, obviously, if you think this is useful. But we'll look at doing some sessions in the future that that start to investigate some of the other interesting components of Istio. And of course, if you want the instructions for doing this, if this recording isn't enough, we do have a class on Udemy. There will be a link in the notes to this class as well, so it's easy for you to find it. And that goes through these in this step-by-step fashion. Plus, there's a bunch of additional video content there that really covers the general capabilities of Istio in more detail. Anyway, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for watching, for those of you that were on. And for those of you that see this later, go ahead and drop us a note if you like it. This will also be posted on YouTube, so maybe you're going to find it on YouTube instead of here on Twitch. And we look forward to the next one of these that we do. Thanks so much for your time.